Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 386 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. As we head into spring, beekeepers will, no doubt, be contemplating various techniques to use on their hives to maximise the season's honey crop. Techniques, such as the shook, swarm and Bailey comb change, are useful ways of replacing comb and reducing pests and disease loading in your hive. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I trust you are all well and feeling the pull of the beekeeping season as we edge ever closer to the start here in the UK. I've been out and about checking in on a few apiaries. We had a warm Monday and Thursday last week, but otherwise something more like normal temperatures for March, I think. High single digit and low double digit temperatures. That's Celsius, of course. The coming week is looking fairly similar. I suspect that if the sun breaks through for any length of time, we will probably see sheltered corners in apiaries getting a decent warming, and although top daytime temperatures are predicted to be around 14 degrees Celsius, anything between 10 and 13 degrees looks to be the way things will go, possibly for the next fortnight. These daytime temperatures are perfectly fine for our bees. Foraging bees will be able to get out when it's dry, and it does look likely that there will be some dry at times. That said, the forecast does look unsettled, so if you do find yourself tempted to start messing around with your hives, be cautious if the temperature drops suddenly because of a little rain. Once again, I'm reminded that it is still early. Not much to do or see really, and colonies are best left alone to get prepared for the coming reproductive phase of the year all by themselves. For me, the start of the spring period is feeling a little weird. After 6 years of occupying the business unit here in Norwich, it does feel somewhat strange not to have that as a place to fuss around in. Of course, I have plenty of other things to keep me occupied. The workshop is gradually getting sorted and tidied. I'm taking a similar approach to the move out of the unit. Let's get rid of anything we appear to be holding on to just in case it's useful. I'm sure you know what I mean. About half of the workshop space is currently being used to store hive parts, mainly brood boxes and nuke boxes, and they do fill a fairly large space. Once these have been filled with new frames and foundation, they'll be taken out to apiaries in readiness for the start of the oilseed rape flowering period. I described my early spring double brood technique at a beekeeping meeting last week and explained how I use it to prevent granulation in supers of OSR honey. The way it works is like this. As we bring colonies out of winter and into spring, they're looking to expand and forage. Here in Norfolk, we have an abundance of OSR crops, an excellent opportunity for our bees and beekeepers. But the main thing beekeepers don't like about it is the very quick way in which it granulates. This is down to the types of sugar in the honey, and there seems to be no way round stopping the granulation process from happening, meaning frames of honey in supers have to be cut out rather than extracted, and that's a real chore for a lot of beekeepers. My double brood system prevents this from happening, but also allows a crop of honey to be taken. Here's how. Following on from initial inspections, colonies deemed to be spring production colonies are earmarked for double brooding. There's no point doing this technique if the colony in question isn't going to produce a spring crop of OSR honey. Once we get into inspections on a regular basis, the point at which a queen excluder and super would traditionally get added is delayed. Instead, I add a brood box filled with frames of foundation. There are so many benefits with this method: replacing comb, providing more space to a growing prolific colony, and delaying granulation in supers, to name but three. The challenge, as I see it in spring, particularly with oilseed rape honey, is avoiding that point at which it sets in the frames, preventing us beekeepers from an easy extraction process at the start of a busy season. By adding a second brood box and not supers, the colony can simply move upwards, brood nest and all, in a kind of chimney up the middle position, instead of the brood nest moving sideways as you might see in a single brood box. The nest, along with the queen, moves upwards. The colony pulls all of the foundation out into comb over a period of several weeks, and once that's done, the queen excluder and supers can be added on top. Now, this is weather sensitive, so timings will vary, but the main point here is that by the time the queen excluder and supers are added, the overnight temperatures have increased to the point when there are no longer any frosts. Colonies have grown larger after that winter and early spring period, brood nests are getting even bigger, and there are now sufficient bees to not only look after the young larvae and eggs, but there's no longer the need to abandon the nectar in the supers in favour of keeping brood warm. And that, I believe, is why so many beekeepers suffer granulation in their spring supers. If you can hold off until the overnight frosts have stopped, you have a far better chance of keeping your OSR honey liquid and extractable. Give it a try. You might just be pleasantly surprised. Once all of that has happened, you can juggle around the brood frames back to a single brood box, removing old gnarly comb and leaving your colony with pristine newly drawn comb to maximise that brood nest area heading into late spring and summer. Sometimes, of course, colonies require a little more management in the spring because of the damaged comb or old unusable comb, or maybe even disease such as chalk brood or nosema, for instance. Here, a strategy of replacing comb is required, and this is the main topic of today's podcast. I will demonstrate these techniques for you once the season gets properly started, so don't worry if it seems all a little too daunting right now. If you decide you need to replace all of the frames in your brood box this spring, you might be considering what method to use. Here I offer up the shook swarm and the Bailey comb change as two options that I've used to good effect in the past, and each has its perfect scenario for use. Let's look at the Bailey comb change first off. I guess it's the less aggressive manoeuvre of the two and is therefore less disruptive. The Bailey comb change is a way of replacing all of the frames in a brood box, but allowing the colony to retain the existing brood they've produced. An important consideration where spring growth is required and the colony is not suffering from any form of severe pest or disease infection. This is a great way of changing out all of the frames in a brood box that maybe are simply old and tired. Maybe you've been given or inherited a healthy colony, but it's been unloved for several seasons and just needs to get onto fresh wax comb to get back to its top performance potential. A Bailey comb change is ideal for just this scenario, and the good news is you don't have to use anything special or expensive in order to do this. So a Bailey board is simply a queen excluder attached to an eek with an entrance, if you like. If you have an eek and you have a queen excluder, you could simply cut a slot into the eek and hey presto, you have a Bailey board. Technically, you'd probably need to screw the queen excluder to the eek to have a proper Bailey board, but there's actually no real need. And if you didn't want to try that method, you could always pop onto the Thorn Beehives website and buy one ready-made. I'll pop a link in the podcast notes for you. The way it works is like this. We have a hive that needs a full replacement of comb. We opt for the Bailey comb change method. During our inspection, we find the queen. Yes, you do need to find the queen. We have a spare brood box with frames of foundation and our Bailey board set up ready to go. I would carry out this technique when there is a nectar flow on. The bees need to produce a lot of wax, and a good supply of nectar will really help. If not, then add a feeder when you're finished. If you can get your queen onto a frame of emerging brood, then great, but if not, simply place her and the frame she's on into the second brood box with all the frames of foundation. Obviously, you'll have to remove one of those frames to accommodate her. Carry out your inspection and rebuild the original brood box. I would use a dummy board instead of adding a frame of foundation to that original box to replace that one that you've moved up into the brood box with the queen on it. Next, place the Bailey board on top of the old brood box. If using a queen excluder and eek, it's queen excluder first and then the eek on top of that. Then add a new brood box on top. Add the feeder if necessary and close them up. Now you have an entrance where the two brood boxes meet. You can close the bottom entrance and the bees will start to use that entrance that's splitting both of those brood boxes. The bees will draw the foundation out quickly, under the right conditions of course, and by the following week or week after, you'll have a full brood box of drawn comb with the brood nest up top. Wait another week for all of the brood in the bottom box to emerge, and once it's empty of brood, simply disassemble, remove the bottom box complete with frames, pop the new box on the floor, remove your Bailey board, and there it is. New frames, new comb, happy beekeeper. The other technique I mentioned is the shook swarm. This creates the same new brood box of drawn comb, but instead of keeping all the frames on until the brood emerges, they're taken away immediately. Now, this might be because of a heavy nosema infection, for instance, or it might be a heavy varroa loading. Or you might just simply want to perform the change quickly without leaving the brood behind because of chalk brood maybe. Lots of reasons for carrying out this technique instead of the Bailey comb change. Here's how it works. We decide the shook swarm is the way we want to go this time and have a new brood box filled with frames fitted with fresh foundation. On inspection, the queen is found. Yes, we need to find the queen again, and we pop her into a queen cage for safekeeping. She goes somewhere in the shade, don't leave her in direct sunlight, and we erect a big sign somewhere close by saying, "Don't forget to put the queen back into the hive." Okay, you don't have to do that, but I have honestly arrived back home with a queen in a cage in my pocket, so be warned. Queen safely set aside, we remove the full brood box off the floor and place a queen excluder on the floor and then the new brood box on top of that. So now we have a floor, a queen excluder and the brood box full of frames with foundation. A good tip here is to place the old brood box behind the hive entrance, otherwise returning flying bees will simply refill the brood box you're trying to empty. Now then, take a deep breath and one by one take out the old frames and shake the bees off into the new box. It's easier done if you remove maybe 3 or 4 frames from the new box to give yourself room to carry out the shaking without bashing frames together. If this seems harsh, you could always brush the bees off, I guess, but that takes a lot longer. Each time you shake a frame into the new brood box, place it behind the hive, but not back into the old brood box. Otherwise, bees will move across and repopulate it if you're not quick enough. We carry on doing this for each frame in the old brood box until all of the frames have been shaken and brushed clear of bees. Ideally, if you have a spare floor and crown board or roof, it will help keep bees out of the old brood box where you're going to put all of those old frames. Once complete, replace the frames of foundation that you took out in order to give yourself space to shake the frames, and now we have a new brood box full of frames with foundation and a colony of adult bees. No brood, no eggs, no queen. Oh, right, let's get our queen back in there before we forget. Take the cage and, while holding it close to the tops of the new frames, slide it open and allow the queen to run out and down into the hive. The queen excluder we place between the floor and the brood box is there to prevent absconding by the colony, which can happen. The queen excluder will keep the queen trapped in the brood box, and once she starts to lay eggs in the newly created cells, they're pretty much going to stay put, and you can remove the queen excluder at your next inspection. It's important to add a feeder to a shook swarm. I do it even if there is a nectar flow on. I want the bees to have access to food day and night. Add the crown board and roof, and that's the process complete. Keep an eye on them, and again, as with the Bailey comb change, if everything goes well, you'll have a brood box full of newly created cells for your queen to lay eggs into in double quick time. If you carried out this process because of a disease issue, I would also give them all new hive parts. That's a new floor, queen excluder, crown board and roof. The benefit here is that you're removing any pest or disease loading that might be held in those frames that the colony may have had, along with the old grotty comb that it might have been hiding in. I would recommend this technique if you inherit or obtain a colony from an unknown source. It just makes sense to me to be cautious of old comb where you don't know its history. Take away the old frames regardless of whichever technique you've employed and get them rendered down. Keep the wax for exchange and boil the frames for reuse if that's your preferred method. And there you have it, 2 techniques for replacing brood frames that can work incredibly well and give your colony a much needed boost in available cells for brood. A reduction in pests, a reduction in disease loading, with the resulting improvement in health helping to boost any potential honey production you might have planned in the summer. Let me know if you're planning to give either method a try, and I'd be delighted to hear how it all turns out for you. Well, that's it for this week. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now, and if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,700 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for the beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible, no waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2026 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey, and you never know, there may be something there that will help improve your beekeeping. Check us out online at www.patreon.com/Norfolk Honey.